Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, do you often negatively compare yourself with other people and end up feeling inadequate? The inner critic is one of the biggest obstacles to self-growth and happiness. Well, in this teaching, we're going to be exploring how to break the cycle of negative judgment and comparison, so you can learn to be inspired and confidently walk your own unique path. Okay, David, so this inner critic, where does it come from and what's its purpose?
Okay, so we would call it the inner child. Some people would call it the ego. But I think the term, the understanding of the inner child, it's much clearer and help us to understand it. But it is a part of our psyche. So if you think about it as the inner child, and by the way, we call this inner critic CCJ, comparing, criticizing, or being judgmental. So the inner child is acting in that role of criticizing, comparing, and being judgmental.
So, David, have we always had this inner critic? Is it, obviously we're going to come and talk about all the downsides of an inner critic, but does it have a positive role or purpose?
Well, this is why the inner child idea really works, because for the inner child, it does think there's a benefit. So I'll give you a couple of examples. It's normally based around what I call emotional manipulation. So first of all, here's one of the examples. The inner child part of your psyche will think that if it criticizes itself harshly, if it really knocks itself down, if it makes itself small, then if somebody else does it, it won't be so bad because they've done it worse to themselves. So it's almost like they're taking out a negative insurance policy to keep them from the stings and the arrows of other people's criticisms or judgment hurting them more, because they can't say anything worse than the inner child has said to themselves.
So this logic, or this inner child logic, or the logic of that part of our ego, is that formed in our early childhood years?
Yes, it's very much formed. I think the ages of between 6 and 9 years old, in all my experience working with clients, I think that age gap has got a lot to think about. For instance, if you were heavily criticized by your parents and couldn't do right, you will either swing on the pendulum, you will then try and be perfect and do everything right on one end of the pendulum, or you will swing to the other side and criticize yourself so you're prepared, so their criticism won't dig so deep. And so this is why this is such an interesting subject for me to talk about, because in its complexity, it's the inner child part of our minds sets up this intricate kind of, we call it the emotional pendulum, where it can swing from one side to the other side in a blink of an eye. And here's another example. So the inner child will criticize itself, will demean itself, will say, I'm not good enough. Here are the 3 lies we talk about a lot. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable. Why do they do that? For basically the same reasons. They're hoping that if somebody else sees them suffering, having emotional turmoil, they will go a little bit easy on them. They will treat them differently. They will walk on eggshells around them. And that's why a lot of my clients don't like the term I use. But I think it's a really relevant term. I'd like you to consider it. Emotional manipulation. Using your emotions to manipulate situations. And that's why coming back to the core teaching, Alex, is very important. Either you believe that you create your emotions, or you believe somehow other people put the emotions into your body.
Well, I think David, I think a lot of people would say, hold on a minute, I compare myself to other people, or I set decent standard for myself as a means of almost like survival, self-preservation. Or a lot of people would say, well, I compare with my peers, with people who I look up to, is a means of self-improvement, so I can measure my own improvement and goals. I don't think I'm doing some sort of bizarre emotional manipulation or trying to play a victim. I'm doing this comparison thing to be proactive.
And I would disagree with you 100%, because the basis of that understanding is that you want to walk in other people's footsteps. So you look at somebody else and you say, I want to be like them. I want to be better than them. And this is why comparing cannot work. Because if you believe that we are unique spiritual beings, they're walking on their journey that's unique to them. Why would you want to walk on a similar journey? And plus, as you well know, the image you see of other people is a mask. It's not the truth. What they portray to you at work, what they say to you, is not what's going on in their life. So you say, well, I see what they're doing and I want to do better. So again, what you're doing is moving the responsibility instead of saying, I should be accountable and responsible to reach my true potential. That's my responsibility, not wasting my energy on comparing them. Because if you do that, and here's another thing, you are on what I call the carousel of despair, because you'll always find somebody who's doing better, who looks better, got a better figure, earning more money, got a bigger car, got a bigger house, got what you perceive to be a happy family, what you think looks better than you. And this is why social media for our young ones is so important, because that thrives on comparison and it takes them into the carousel and they lose sight of their own spirituality.
And also, David, I was just thinking this morning that oftentimes you find that the people who are the most outwardly successful, so the most wealthy, have the best careers, the best kind of physical health that looks, you actually talk to these people in real life and they are racked with a sense of scarcity, with a sense of self-doubt, of a sense of inadequacy, and that, okay, you could say, well, that drives them to work even harder. But, what is it ultimately we're after here? We're after, experiencing a life of peace, of satisfaction, of love, of calmness, of contentment, of gratitude. So, in our society and culture, we're fed that if you achieve this, if you look like this, if you have this, then you'll feel great. But actually, the people who do have these things, they don't, because, as you say, they're on this carousel of despair. So, of course, there will always be people who haven't got what they have in terms of material trappings. But in terms of life satisfaction, in terms of gratitude, in terms of contentment, these people are striving.
So the Taoist teaching really encapsulates this. And here's the teaching. There is no destination. You cannot reach a destination. There's no end point where you go, well, that's it. I've got everything I need. I'm completely satisfied. I don't have to strive anymore. I'm at my end point. No, real life is the journey, not the destination. Is how we journey, how we are connected to ourselves. And by looking out and following somebody else, the Taoists have a wonderful saying about this. Don't walk in other people's footprints. Create your own footprint. You are unique. You have a spiritual identity. There is no one in the universe like you. Thank goodness. So comparing yourself to somebody else who are also unique, and there's no one in the universe like you, I hope you don't mind me using this word, it's just nonsensical. It just doesn't make sense. It's like walking into a field and saying, well, this butterfly is better than this butterfly, or this flower is prettier than this flower. You're wasting so much energy. And so many of my clients come to me and they say that they're worn out and they're drawn and they've got no energy and they're lifeless. But they've got plenty of time to do this carousel of despair, they're quite happy to step onto the carousel and say, well, my next door neighbour just bought a new car. Look at our car. We've had it for 3 years. And I say, well, does your car serve your purpose? Oh, yeah, my car's fine. Why are you worried about their car? Yeah. If they choose to spend their money on a car and you choose to spend your money on a holiday, these are your individual choices. You should absolutely celebrate your choices. And by comparing yourself, to me, being a Taoist, is doing something far more powerful. You're denying your own spirituality. At the core of this, you're saying, I'm not enough. I have to be better. You've used it a couple of times. I have to drive myself. Why do you have to drive yourself? And again, a lot of my clients will say, well, I'm lazy. You're not lazy. Why would you tell yourself those lies? Because you're on the carousel. And to stay on the carousel, it's the lies that keeps it spinning.
I think, David, the fundamental here is distinguishing the difference between truly believing that we are worthy, we have value, having that acceptance and understanding at the core of us, but then saying from this place of enoughness, I can grow in terms of my skill set. I can learn to be healthier. I can create a healthy living environment for my family to grow in. I can push myself, or I can skill myself up in terms of my career. But they are done almost like as exercises of self-love and self-exploration, and then it's not driven by a perception that we are in lack as a person or that we need validation by other people.
Well, you mentioned so many things there, Alex, and it's very important. So you're right, you come down and you have to go to the core starting point that I call the first domino. Have you ever seen those things when they hit the domino and all the dominoes spread out? You have to go to the first domino, the core belief. Do you believe you are inherently and innate in your worth and value? Do you believe that somebody else gives you worth and value? Do you believe that somebody else can extract worth and value from you? And these are very fundamental beliefs. And this is what I find with my clients. They will answer something like this. I've listened to your videos and your teachings and your podcasts. Yes, I intelligently or maturely agree with you, but... See, there should be no but there. You either agree with that or you don't agree with that. What they're saying is, I intelligently agree with that. Of course, it's innate. Nobody can give you worth and value. It's not a commodity. But what they're saying is the inner child doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
The inner child believes that worth is given to them by attention, by love, by somebody taking care of them, by being protected, like a child. And that's why I like the analogy of a child. There's nothing wrong with a child believing that when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They also believe in tooth fairies and Santa Clauses. Nothing wrong in that. But as you mature, you should release those beliefs that don't serve you. And many of my clients have an intelligent core belief that, of course, I create my emotions, of course I'm worthy, but their inner child will resist them. And this creates the tug of war. So although they'll say, I agree with the teachings, and they'll also use the word but. So listen to yourself. If you use the word but in the middle of a sentence, I agree with you, David, but it means forget what I've just said. I would prefer you to say, I don't agree with you. Wouldn't that be clearer? Wouldn't that be more honest? Then you can tell us why you don't agree. And because if you get onto the carousel, and then this is another thing about the inner child, we've done many videos on, the carousel becomes familiar.
Yeah. And
also becomes comfortable. I know people say, oh, it's not comfortable having red light feelings every morning, waking up anxious, being scared is not comfortable. But it's familiar. And you are creating that. And you have to stop this inner child game. And you have to find out what are the beliefs that are creating them.
So I think, using the golden thread process therapy model, which is what you use with all your clients, if we catch ourselves with an uncomfortable or painful red light emotional feeling, whether it's resentment, whether it's envy, whether it's anxiety, whether it's inadequacy, because we're comparing, we need to stop ourselves at that junction and really question what is driving that emotional feeling, because the feeling is triggered by a thought, and the thought is triggered by a belief. Yes. And the belief will always come back to, as you work, this is what you work with all your clients, the belief that I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I can't cope.
Yes, so the emotional feelings, well, the first step on the golden thread process is 100%. Do you believe you create your emotional feelings? I'm not saying if you get your thumb caught in the door and it hurts. I'm talking about your emotional feelings, like the ones that Alex has just described. That's the first step, 100%. No, I'm 90% there. Again, this is what a lot of my clients say. Since our last session, I'm 90% there. Then I say, well, you don't believe it then. You're not 90% there. You either believe it or you don't believe it. I'm happy with any answer. But if you start and say, yes, obviously, emotions don't float through the air. Other people can't send them to me down their eyes. Some clients say that to me. It comes down people's eyes. They put it into me. They somehow can transportate it into my body. But once you believe that doesn't make sense, that's just the inner child creating justifications. Then the emotion is the door that opens onto the inner child. I would prefer you to call it a red light or a green light. Don't give it a name like anxiety, resentment. Just, I'm now creating a red light. Now, isn't this interesting? Let's now find out, because the red light is always the consequence. Let's find out, why have I chosen to create the emotion? Because here's another teaching. And again, this is a lot of people when they come back. I am not saying you should not create emotions. Yeah. I'm saying emotions are absolutely natural and normal, but you have to be accountable for creating them. Emotions cover the word like love, joy, compassion, kindness, happiness, confidence. These are all words of emotions. So there's nothing wrong with emotions, but you have to get to the core. You cannot be driven. You use the word trigger, which I don't really like. I call it the consequence. The emotion is always the consequence. The spilt milk. You can look at the spilt milk and talk about it for days and days and days, but let's find out why you knocked the milk over. Let's find out what the cause is. And the reverse and the golden thread is like reverse engineering, or what you said once, which I really like that fairy tale of tracing the breadcrumbs back.
Yeah.
So, and the question is, why? Why have I created, let's use fear. Why have I created fear? The answer should sound like, I have chosen to create fear because. Mm-hmm. And then you can do it again. So why do you believe that? I believe that because.
So an example would be, I experience a red light feeling of anxiety when I look at my neighbour who's got a new car, or, going on a fantastic new holiday. And so I ask myself, what am I thinking here? Yeah. So they're doing this, or they now have this. Therefore, I'm falling behind. I'm in lack. I'm not doing well. So I'm not. And this is now the inner criticism.
So now I'm just stopping you because you do what the inner child does. Now, you see what Alex did then. I didn't want to interrupt her, but it's very interesting. Alex did what the inner child does. It doesn't answer the question. It now spins its narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't answer the direct question. Why are you comparing yourself to them? So the answer should be one sentence. I choose to compare myself to them because
I see them as my peers, and I should be doing as well as them.
That's fine. So just that one sentence is fine, is in the golden thread. Why do you want to choose them to be your peers? Why do you want to make that choice?
Well, because they are my peers, because, my neighbour's the same age as me, the family's the same as ours, blah, blah, blah. We live in the same street. Therefore, yes, we're equals. But for whatever reason, my neighbour is doing better than me.
But they can't be equals if you put them to your peer, because you just elevated them.
Well, peers is my equal.
So they're your equals.
Yeah.
So in your word, the peer is equal.
But they're doing better, yeah.
So
exactly.
they can't be equal then.
Yeah, but I should be doing as well, if not better.
Okay. So why do you believe that you should be doing as well or better than somebody that you're equal to? And again, try and keep the answer concise. Now you see what the inner child will want to do is Alex demonstrated it perfectly.
Well, I'll tell you what my inner child says. It's just because that's the way it should be. Because I don't want to be a failure.
Now you see how quickly we got to how can you be a failure? So that's our one.
So is this now about the metrics by which we're measuring ourselves by?
Exactly.
So, this is the point where we identify we're actually using inauthentic metrics.
Exactly.
And that I shouldn't be looking at the size of their car or what holiday they're going on. Should I be looking at other metrics, like how happy are they?
No.
How are they living? Or should I not be looking at all?
Not looking at all. You should be concentrating on your metrics.
Yeah.
On what's right for you.
So what should I...
So this is self-responsibility.
Okay, so are you saying I should acknowledge?
Yeah.
Oh, good for them. Wow.
Be happy for them.
I hope they have I hope they enjoy the new car.
Exactly.
But then not let that diminish or taint how I think about myself and my journey in any way.
Exactly. You should be very pleased for them. You should congratulate them. Perhaps he's got a new promotion. Perhaps they save money.
Yeah.
Perhaps he beats his wife. I don't know what goes on behind door. So instead of wasting your energy on what they are doing or not doing, why don't you concentrate and take accountability for what you're doing?
I think, David, it's almost seems like a foreign land to switch off that autopilot of comparison, because we are encouraged to do it all the time with everything.
So then I would stop, because this is, if you're speaking from your inner child, did you see what she just did? This is auto.
Yeah.
Because what she's saying now, I'm not responsible for this. Yeah. It's just auto.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing it. It just happens. And this is the inner child. And this is why the golden thread can be so demanding, but so simple. So Alex has quite wonderfully demonstrated. The first thing the inner child will do is not answer your question succinctly. It will want to go on a big narrative. It will want to take you on its story. Poor me. Look at them. I should be the same as them. I think they're equal to me. And they're not equal to me. Now they're higher than me. See, so now it's doing comparison. Yeah. That's why I said, well, how can they be your peers if you think they're better than you? Now you've created a hierarchical. Yeah. Now the inner child has created hierarchy. Now I've got to beat them. How can you beat them? You don't know what's going on in their life. And what's more, I would say, you don't need to know. You should be concentrating on your journey, what's going on in your life, what's going on in your family, and why, if you want to go on an expensive holiday, why aren't you organizing your life and your finances so you can reach what I call intention, yi? Why can't you set your intention and say, next year we're going on a wonderful holiday? And this is what we have to do to achieve that and get the whole family committed to that.
And I can see, David, if we're constantly taking our life references of our neighbours, our colleagues at work, of people we see on social media, of all external people and situations, and never off our own metrics of our own internal self-referencing, it's almost like we become like the pinball in a pinball machine, thrown from one corner to the other, to the other, to the other. And all the while, we're losing the opportunity to do this self-referencing, this inner check, and say, well, what do I authentically want for myself? What do I authentically want for my family? And almost conserving all your energy and creativity and resourcefulness and resources to navigating that true journey, rather than navigating a multitude of journeys which are other people's journeys. And then you're still not doing those journeys successfully because it's not authentic and true to you.
And we could go on talking about this for hours, Alex, because it becomes even more powerful. It's like turning the tap and letting your energy go down the drain. Because here's the reality. If you say, well, they've got a better car than me, let me now concentrate on buying a bigger car because that will make me happier. Guess what? It doesn't. So now you're striving again. And when I do these teachings, I do it every time. I always have this image of the donkey and the carrot. The donkey stretching for the carrot, but never reaching it. So wouldn't it be better if we moved house? Wouldn't it be better if we moved area? Wouldn't it be better if I found a new partner? Wouldn't it be better if I changed my job? Wouldn't it be better if I lost 10 pounds? Wouldn't it be better if... It's never ending. And one of my clients said, I call it the carousel of despair. She said, no, I call it the hamster's wheel. I go faster and faster and faster. I'm tired, I get off, I'm in exactly the same place. And this is why this line of reasoning is flawed. Flawed very basically. I believe what Alex says. It's flawed basically in your inherent, your innate worth and value. Because if you believed in yourself, what car they had, where they went on holiday, you would genuinely, if you're a loving spiritual person, be so thrilled for them rather than holding on to this resentment. And guess what? This isn't... we could talk about this again, because when you create this red light feeling of jealousy, resentment, do you think they're suffering? Do you think they understand it? Do you think they even know? Who's the only one? It's like drinking poison and expecting them to suffer or to sell their car and buy a car that's slightly less than yours to make you feel better.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. And so you have to pull back. You have to pull back to these fundamental core beliefs. Do I create my emotions? If I do, I cannot be the victim of them. Do I have innate worth and value that no one can add to? So the idea of validation is nonsense. Nobody can give you validation. Can anybody take your validation? If anybody says, I don't like you, Alex, I think you're talking rubbish, does that make you less valuable? These are really fundamental. And I think this is the difference in the Wu Wei Wisdom model. Because when you get down to the fundamentals, it's a spiritual teaching. Yeah. And the spiritual teaching is, you are already awesome. You are born awesome. You are amazing. You have everything you need. You've always had everything you need. And really in these life lessons, we're trying to reconnect you back to who you really are. Not who you think you're better than them, because you're just wasting energy. It's taking accountability and responsibility for who you are. And if you believed in yourself, a fraction of what I believed in you, your life would change today.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Well, I will put a link in the show notes to more teachings to help you with this topic. Next week, David is publishing a beautiful new guided meditation on beating the inner critic and loving yourself. So please do tune in for that as well. If you have enjoyed this teaching, do also subscribe to David's free blog on Substack. Check out the link in the show notes for that. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with David on any of the issues we've talked about today, David works with clients all over the world by Zoom video call. And again, check out the link in the show notes to learn more about David's sessions. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.